Hi guys, welcome to the showcase. For you on informal showcase, it's called informal for a reason, because it doesn't formally show how the actual machine works, it just shows parts of the machine, the calculator, I mean. To be completely honest with you, I just want feedback on my replay mod footage, because, that's like second time I've used replay mod on this channel, and I want to know how it looked with shaders and everything. Anyways, let's get started. So, first I'm going to be teaching you how to use this calculator, how a user would go about using this, and then I'll show you the actual parts of the calculator and how it works. So, in the showcase, these pieces of glass aren't actually here, but you know, they'll just stay here for the rest of the showcase. So, you start off by typing your first number, so 9. It'll show up on the screen. And then you hit your operator, so you either have add, subtract, multiplied by, divided by, so we'll do multiplied by. Alright, then you check that this lamp is on, and then you do 7 for example. That's our next number. Alright, that'll come up on the screen over there, and we hit display to screen. And it should go through, and display to this screen anytime soon. There's a lot of input delay, I'll tell you this, like input delay and output delay. Yeah, there you go, we got 63. If a user wants to clear their input, before you clear any of the inputs, you have to hit the operator you were using earlier. So we hit multiplication, so it turns off because we're using T flip-flops here, and then we can hit clear input. Because what happens is when we hit the operator, it switches from number 1 to number 2, so if we hit clear input, then it goes to number 1, but then as soon as we turn off our operator, it goes back to number 2, so it's just a bit of an inconvenience. You can do multiple things. I also want to show you 2 more things. You can do 9, let's say, divided by, let's see, I don't know, 6. Right, and then we hit display to screen. We're just waiting for an output on that one. What'll happen is it'll go straight to 0, which I'll explain in just a second. Both of these will reset to 0, and then they'll find their actual number. So that's 1 with a remainder of 3. So 6 times 1 is 6, plus 3 is 9. So we got that correct. We'll hit division. And then we'll hit clear input. Okay, so that resets to 0, that resets to 0. Wait, no, that doesn't reset to 0, sorry. Those 2 reset to 0. And then let's try subtraction. Normal subtraction will do it all fine, so if we do 6, subtract, I don't know, 3, we get... Just waiting on an answer here. Should output a 3. Cool. I am running out of hunger, but that's fine because we only need it for this showcase. So we cleared the inputs. Hold on. Let me turn off my music and just turn that up. We clear the inputs, and then if we want to do a negative subtraction, for example, 2 minus, I don't know, 9, we hit display to screen, and we're just waiting on that to answer. So we can see our negative symbols already come into play. That resets to 0, and we get negative 7. Cool. Yeah, I don't really know what else to explain. That's the formal showcase done. I hope you enjoyed it. So, now that we've done our formal showcase, I'm gonna show you how the actual calculator does its stuff. Let me throw that out. So, first of all, how do we get our inputs? So we have a 9-button board, pretty obvious here. Our 9-button board gets pulled apart. So for example, this line corresponds to the line of 2. So this line goes all the way over here, around, back, and then we use encoders to encode these lines into binary because that's how redstone works. Actually, let me turn on my resource pack. Using map Batwing's resource pack. I don't know what happened. Anyways, yeah, that looks a lot better, doesn't it? So we encode it into binary. So this is the line for 2. Another example, let's see, this line corresponds to the line for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can tell that we're encoding it into 6 because, look, hold on. Oh, I can't. Because, look, 0 1s, 1 2, 1 4, and 0 8. So that's a 6. And we do the same encoding for the purple side, which is our second number. But to make sure that we differentiate our first and second number, because we want to make sure they're different numbers, we're not just adding the same 2 numbers every single time, we use an AND gate to separate them. So if this AND gate is on, that means we can type our second number. And if these redstone are on, then we can type our first number. So yeah, that's the main function of that. So let's say I cleared the inputs. Doesn't really matter if subtraction is on right now. Freaking get out. So what happens is this powers this black line, this red input we had just here to clear inputs thing. It powers this black line, which in turn, first of all, resets all of these RS NOR latches. Check out my last video if you don't know what an RS NOR latch is. And then it either it powers this RS NOR latch. So based on how it's getting powered, it can either be on this side, or it can be on this side. It depends, and it's an RS NOR latch for that same reason. So whenever you turn this one on, it powers this side, and this yellow line is a line we derive from our operator buttons. Hold on, this I'm sorry, I put the glass here for a formal showcase, but I'm gonna remove it now because it's getting really annoying. There we go. So just do that up. So we take the output from our operators. So for example, division, it goes into this line, goes through here all the way up, and then input it into this RS NOR latch, turning it on so that we can type our our second number. Yeah, so that's our input mechanisms. Now these lines that are our numbers, they get taken out into these gray and white lines. The white lines represent our first number, and the gray lines represent our second number. The yellow lines go into T flip-flops. Let me show you how one works right now. So which ones are on? Subtraction and division. So basically, I'll make one right now actually. It's quite a simple process. If we go into redstone, I'll just get a button. So a T flip-flop basically is a mechanism that turns on and off with the same button. So let's say I power this sticky piston, that goes into this observer, that goes to this sticky piston, into this redstone block, and we'll power a redstone lamp, let's just say. So you turn it on, and it turns on, and if you want to turn it off, it'll turn off. So same mechanism applies here. We turn on subtraction, for example, it turns on, and then we turn off subtraction, and it turns off. Main downside to this though, we can't, if we type in another one, for example, if we turn on subtraction and division at the same time, it's not stopping us from doing that. It'll just combine their answers, which may cause a mix-up in the actual final output. So it's best that you just turn it off. So these get derived through these purple lines. We duplicate each of the lines and send them behind the display to make for these little areas of lamps behind here, as you can see. Yeah, and that's our operators. I'll explain what the purpose of the purple lines later. Actually, I can explain that right now. So, first of all, we'll look at multiplication. Multiplication, we use the design by MatBatWings. I say we, but I made this. I use the design made by MatBatWings. It's a sequential multiplier that uses a cumulative addition. It's pretty cool. You input your two numbers into each side. It's a 4-bit multiplier. And then what happens is we take each of the outputs, which is signified by these lines over here, these repeaters, and we AND them. So if the multiplication T flip-flop is on, I'll turn it on right now actually. If it is on, so it goes on, this purple line is on, then what happens is when we multiply, for example, an output comes out of here. So, oopsies. An output comes out of here. And then it gets put into this AND gate. So, oh no, that's gonna cause the thing to completely mess up. So it goes into this AND gate right here, and if both of these are on, because this is multiplication on, then we take this output as an output. If this isn't on because our user didn't want multiplication, this output stays on, but it won't output the AND gate, which means that we won't be able to multiply. So yeah, that's a quick explanation of our multiplier. Nothing much else to explain though. And yeah, so we AND all of these, and then this is our final output on these repeaters. Yeah. Okay, so how this works as well, it's a sequential multiplier, which means we need to actually put a 7-tick pulse into the multiplier to get it started. So that display to screen button we used earlier, the green one, it actually branches off into two directions. This direction, which we'll go into later, and this direction, which goes into our multiplier. First of all, it clears the inputs, and then a few ticks after that, it puts in the 7-tick pulse, which gets the multiplication going. Alright, next thing we did was subtraction. Now this one was a bit of a ride for me. So, we did our inputs. Input A is white, input B is black, so white minus gray. Sorry, that's gray, not black. These top two were not really necessary. We don't need an input here. We do need an input here to be inverted. And how does this work? Well, first of all, we do the same tactic as earlier. We AND all of our outputs with the actual subtraction line. So, yeah. And then you might be wondering, how do you subtract with the binary? I mean, it's a system that only works in positive, right? So, let me explain it really quickly here. Let me destroy all of these. Basically, how you subtract with binary. First of all, you you get your normal number, correct? You have two numbers. We'll subtract two 2-bit numbers right here. If I can find a lever. So, I want to subtract 2 from 3. That's not meant to happen, is it? We're not meant to have it that close. I want to subtract 2 from 3. So, binary subtraction works by adding negative numbers. So, for example, I'll put an example up on screen. If you want to subtract 4 from 5, so 5 minus 4, instead of subtracting, you can do 5 plus negative 4. How do you get a negative number in binary, you ask? Well, it's simple. You do something called 2's complement, and I'll explain it really quickly. You invert the number you want to become negative, so we inverted 2, and then we add 1. So 1, 1, 0. Now, it's important to note that this bit at the end, this is called our sign bit. If this is on, then it's a negative number. If it's off, then it's a positive number. So that's what we're doing with this green line right here. So we're checking, well, is the sign bit on? Because this is our final sign bit. If it's on, what we do is we've duplicated our 4-bit answer. So the bottom line is our line if it's a positive, and the top line is our line if it's a negative. We use comparator locks here because it's pretty easy. So if the sign bit is off, which means that it's not a negative number, then we do not let our can let negative answers through. So for example, if I put an answer into here, it'll be let through because the sign bit is off. However, it's very important to note that if the sign bit is on, we won't be letting any of the positive numbers through. So if I put a lever through here and then I turn on the sign bit, then even though I'm putting an output into here and it can be seen here, it won't be let out through the comparator lock. On the other hand, if the sign bit is negative and it's like on, then we won't be able to let anything through. So this is our negative line, so it won't let anything through. But if it is on, if the number is negative, we can let an input through. So yeah, that's negatives. And to make sure that and then finally, because our number 2 here, we do not know that this is a 2 technically, if I'm being honest with you. We don't know if this is a 2 because it's a completely different number. Let me make an example for you. I'll cut that last part out. Cut from whatever it was. So let's say this is our sign bit and we're trying to represent 3. So -3, I mean. So we have a 3 here. We invert it. And we add 1. So that's 1, 1, 0, 1. So how is a computer meant to know that this is a 3 and not just a 5 if we're ignoring the sign bit? Because the sign bit doesn't go anywhere in the end. The only place it goes is that negative sign that you would have seen earlier through this black line over here, which I'll go into displays later. So how does it do it? Well, it just inverts it and adds 1 again. So we put it through 2 adders, through 2 subtractors technically, but we do another one. So our first one is our normal subtraction. Then if it's a negative number, we put it through we put it through an inversion and then a carry-in, which only gets turned on if it's a negative number because we want to make sure we don't accidentally turn it on if it's positive. And then on the final step, we have to make sure it's a negative number for sure, and we got to let it out. Because listen, what we're doing at the end is we're ORing all of these numbers together. So we're ORing our 8th bit, our 4th bit, and our 2nd bit, our 1 bit, with the actual negative numbers. So if these are off, then these must be on. If these are off, then these must be on. So we got to combine them somehow, right? But the only problem is, if all of these are off, if all of these inputs are off, these redstone dust I'm looking at, not the torches, don't worry about the torches. If all of them are off, then our output's going to be 15, which is 1, 1, 1, 1. And we don't want that. So we just make one last check that it's negative to allow our negative output through just in case. Because have a look, all of these are on, and if we let it through, it wouldn't be very good. So that was a very confusing explanation. I'd be happy if you actually understood that. Division. We used a conditional subtractor, which is basically subtraction, but if the number goes into the negatives, it returns input A, which is right here. This is input A. Oopsies, that's not meant to. Oh god, I might break the thing. Ah! Stop destroying stuff. Okay, there you go. So, yeah, it does that. And then we just put our inputs into here. It's a conditional subtractor. Our outputs get taken from the top here, and yeah, that's really all there is to say about it. And we put them through the AND gates again. It's purple line. Our remainder gets put at this bottom here, at like the very end here. We don't need these lamps actually because we're not doing 8 bits, are we? And yeah, this I'll explain later as well because why not? Anyways, next and final is addition. Addition was pretty simple. I just used a 5-bit CCA adder. Credit to Magic for making this. I'll put his channel up on the screen. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing much to say, and we just put this into our normal output. Okay. So, now I'll explain how, first of all, some of the more miscellaneous things, like our displays. So, first of all, how does this thing work? Basically, we've got our remainder here, correct? We decode our outputs. So, for example, this is a representative of this is representative of this is representative of a 1, so this is representative of 1, 2, 4, and 8. Notice how there's none on the 8th line, because the highest remainder you can get with division under 9 is a 4. So we only need to encode up to 4 lines. And then we only need to decode up to 4 lines, so this line represents a 1, this line represents a 2, this represents a 3, a 4, and then this line represents a 0, so just be careful of that. Then we encode them to our 7-segment displays, so I'll show you what I'm talking about. You see these torches here? Whichever ones are on, they'll activate the actual segment on our display. So if I slowly just go along this big line, go behind it, you can see that it's going into this little white thing, correct? I'm gonna go into spectator mode for this one. It's powering this these 7 segments. That's really all to say about it. It doesn't look that good when you type certain numbers like 1 because it's just those 2 dots on the side, but it gets the point across, correct? Okay, next thing is our 2 displays for our numbers on top. What is there to explain about these? We took the output from this, we took the output from here, took it around back through here at the bottom here, and then it went underneath. We decoded this white one into 10 lines, and then we brought it up into this 7-segment display symbolized by the black, and then we took our gray lines, decoded them into another 10 lines, and then put them into another segment display on this side. So yeah, that's that really. Our next thing is okay, so now we're gonna get over to this thing, this monstrosity of a decoder. So you may be wondering, what is this big this big creation that I have here? It takes our final output, so you know how we've been combining all of our outputs into one big output here? It takes our final output and puts it into a binary to BCD serial decoder. You might be wondering, what is BCD? And you'd be good for asking that, I'd say. I'll give you an example. So we have a binary number. Hold on. I don't know how many bits this is. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and then we'll put 64 because that's the longevity of our numbers. 64. Okay, so we have our numbers, correct? So if we had a number, say, like, if our thing outputted 72 for 8 times 9. So 72 would be 64 plus 8. Okay, so this display can only read a 1001000 if we decode it. But if we decoded our lines into 81 possible scenarios, because 9 times 9 is 81, that would take me forever, and this thing would be much larger than it already is. So instead we do this thing called we use this thing called BCD, which stands for binary coded decimal. How does it work? basically, instead of having this big binary number, it takes the outputs and splits them into two 4-bit numbers. This number is the tens. This number is the ones. I think you can see where this is going. So in our decimal system, we just represent a tens place with a normal number. So like 60, the tens place as a 6. And our ones place with another number. So like 67, we represent the ones place with a 7. BCD does the same thing, but it's binary coded decimal. So it does literally the same thing, but instead of having a 6, like instead of having like a 6 or 60, you'd have a 0110 for a 6. And then a 7 would be like that. So that would represent 67. In our case, we're representing 72. So we'd represent it like this. Boom, 72. And that's what this thing does. It does it through this system called the double dabble system. I will not explain it because I know you're already getting bored. But basically it does that. This cyan line is our tens line, and this blue line is our ones line. It takes these lines, decodes them into 10 more lines, which is pretty big, goes behind the display, and then we use two final 7-segment displays to represent these numbers. So the cyan line goes here into this 7-segment display because it's a tens, and if you keep a keen eye, that's the tens, that's the ones, and then we put our negative number here if we want to use it. Yeah, that's mostly everything I've done here in this world. There's not much else to explain, is there? Yeah, I spent like, I don't know, maybe a weekish working on this. I'm recording this like the day before I leave to go meet my family on like the other side of the world, so it's been quite fun making this video. Yeah, and I hope you enjoyed. I'll leave a world download in the description if I'm if I'm lazy enough to do so. Yeah, thank you.